episode of Let's Chat RPGs. I'm your host, as always, Dr. RPG Jeff Harvey. Joining me today is a guest who will be joining me for the first time in the future in episode 5. This is episode, I think, probably 2, although maybe 3. I don't know. We'll see when it comes out. I hope you enjoy the show. And today we're going to be talking about AI in role-playing games. It's a very controversial issue. I know a lot of people are for it. I know that Wizards of the Coast is at least kind of for it. I, on the other hand, am generally opposed to it on a professional level. But I do use AI in some of my writing, my own personal game writing and stuff like that. So just to establish a quick where you're standing on this topic, Kent, do you have any particular thoughts one way or the other?
Well, AI is the future of all industry. I mean, they're trying to incorporate it in so many ways to so many different styles of art forms. But I do think that it does kind of deprive the creativity of man, of people.
Right.
I think it is inevitable. I think that it is going to be incorporated into our day-to-day lives quicker than we know and in more ways than we know. But I think that RPG storytelling, even role-playing itself, is a art form. And I think to incorporate more and more AI to it takes a lot of agency away from the people who participate in it.
Agreed, to some extent anyways. Certainly AI is a huge part of our everyday lives. Our vehicles have AI. Our phones are basically built on AI platforms. A lot of our smart technologies around the house, even refrigerators, have a lot of AI in them now. Laptops, of course, are using AI. It is literally everywhere. Even if you don't think it is, it's everywhere. Tabletop RPGs have seen a huge increase in the use of AI in recent years to enhance not only gameplay and storytelling, but also player experiences. The use of AI in writing TTRPGs is extremely controversial, and that's something I definitely want to touch on. Some people argue that it's unethical to use AI-generated art content, especially artwork, because it takes some elements from other people to create something that is new. There's also the argument that that's how all art works. All art is derivative of something else. So AI being art or writing you can fall on either side of it. There's definitely value to the tools that are there, but ultimately decision for using this stuff will fall to the individual. I know that. Go ahead.
Well, 100%. And I think that there are benefits to it. I think that it is going to create a stable platform. And I mean, even video games are getting more and more intelligent all the time,
right?
In their design. I mean, look at Baldur's Gate 3. Like, it's become so customizable to the point that they can update storylines on a rapid pace, that they can create new content on a rapid pace. And while that is beneficial, where's the artists and the authors they could be using for it, the people that they could be paying? I mean, a lot of people could potentially be put out of work by this.
Yes. I know that one of the artists working for Dungeons & Dragons' latest book, Bigby Presents the Glory of the Giants, stated that they used AI art to generate certain details or polish and editing in a recent post that was on Twix or Twitter or whatever they're calling it these days. The community backlash on that, though, again, is very similar to what you're saying. This was someone who had submitted artwork to be published in D&D, and then AI was used to polish and edit that artwork without the author's or the creator, in this case's, knowledge or consent. Not only can it put people out of work in secondary writers, is one of the big things that is going on with the Hollywood strike right now, is that there's a lot of AI generated content, or at least potential content, coming from things like Chat AI or Chat GPT and other chat AIs. What's your thoughts on using in this particular context, like using art to polish or edit, finalizing editing? Like, I use Grammarly, which is an AI. I use it to help me with my constant writing. I also use it to help keep track of how many words I write, which are too many.
Well, I think it's up to the artist, honestly. Like, if the artist is trying to put forth a certain quality of work, a certain style of work, I think using AI without their permission to polish up their artwork, takes away some of the qualities that make their artwork what it is, and B, it's really, really, really convenient excuse to kind of cut the artist out of the mix, to use them as a base
Right.
model for what they're trying to create. And then by polishing it up, they can say, well, it's not really yours anymore, so we don't have to pay you for it. We don't have to give you credit for it. We can say all these things. We can give you this small base lump to give us the basically framework for it, but then we're going to take it from here and it's no longer in your hands. And if they do have their name attached to it, it's something that they want to be representative of them, representative of their art style, or representative of what
Right.
they do. And once AI gets its hands on it, maybe it's not theirs anymore. But if an artist decides to use AI for their piece and then submit their piece, that's up to them at that point.
Right. You mentioned royalties, and in that, I know a lot of companies are trying to get away from paying royalties or paying artist fees in general. But at the same time, you're also talking about using AI in your own artwork. It's your choice. The point, though, especially with artwork, is since AI scrapes the internet and takes art from everywhere, if you're using it to polish or edit your own artwork, aren't you essentially using your artwork and taking someone else's art to better enhance your art?
I absolutely think so. And I think that's going to be the same case with writing. Like, if it is using the internet, it is using tens of hundreds, possibly even thousands of other artists' work. And it is
Millions.
yeah, bastardizing that work and kind of making this almost like Frankenstein's monster amalgamation of all these other people's work. And at that point, all of those people who they're being drawn from should be seeing pay from it. That's why you hire an artist, is because you want their specific stuff. It's not that you want a little bit of everybody's stuff. And while I'm one of the few in the mindset of that there's not really that many original ideas left over in the world,
Right.
At the same time, like, it is your take, your view, your perspective on those ideas that you're putting forward. Even if it does have inspiration from things, inspiration is different than direct stealing.
Right. I will say that using chatbots, especially ChatGPT, for prompts for things that I want to do in my games, I do use it. I use ChatGPT in I don't use it in my script writing, but I use it in my gaming stuff. So I'll write like, okay, I have this scene in my mind, and I want to write out more detail in the scene. So here's what I have in mind. I feed that into the ChatGPT bot, and then ask it for more detail, and it does a good job. And I will say that using ChatGPT 4, which is the newer, I think there's a 5 out now, but I don't pay for it at the moment. 4 is it doesn't sound like anyone else's writing. You can make it sound like other people's writing, but it sounds like it's deriving its own take on things through your lens. Obviously, the more you use ChatGPT, the more it sounds like you.
Right.
So I don't know that it's necessarily terrible to use, but I don't know that it doesn't feel like that Frankenstein's monster you're talking about. It feels like it can be your own work, especially if you really get in there and do with it. Whereas I think AI artwork, like visual arts, I should say, because writing is an art form, visual art, I think, is it's way easier to determine the derivatives of it. I think you see a lot more of it. I've used Leonardo, and I've used the other one. I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of the more famous ones that's used in Discord. And I used that one for a while, and I liked the results. I didn't use the results anywhere. That is not true. I used the results of a lot of refinement into using a cat lady picture for my Star Trek game, just to see what I thought of it, like to see what I felt. And I don't think I'm going to do it again. I don't think I'm going to use AI artwork in that capacity again, because that does feel Frankenstein-y, but the writing to me feels less Frankenstein. Maybe it's the way I'm using it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, at the same time, this is your product that you're putting out. So if you want to take your words and put them through ChatGPT, if you want to use input from outside services for something that you are creating, that's your choice. You are still in full control of that. It's only your name on it. You know, maybe the names of your players, but they're going to bring their own input to it, obviously, through the play. But when you are the writer or you are the artist and you are deciding to take those extra steps, you are taking responsibility for whatever that thing creates and whether you use it or not. What these bigger companies are doing is they are cutting out creatives. They're taking it away from the people who are, this is all they wanted to do. This is their job. This is their life. And they are basically saying like, yeah, we're going to take what you did and we're going to, use all these other processes to basically change it or manifest what we want out of it. And therefore it's no longer what they created, it's inspired by what they created. And I know that there's editors and there's producers and stuff already that they have to go through and all these different filters they have to go through. But at the end of the day, like they're still their writing. You know what I mean? Like they may have to change it, they may have to alter it, but it's still their writing that's going through. Whereas in this case, will it even be that anymore? Will it even be their art anymore? Will it even be their product? And will they still get credit and pay where it's due for what they do, even if it does go through these filters of AI, of whatever the case may be?
Right. I will say that using AI art and AI writing in RPGs is not exclusive to Dungeons and Dragons and the big companies. In 2023, the game publisher Cubicle Quest released the TTRPG, The Darkest Dungeon, Maldred Manor. I don't know, which featured AI generated art for the cover and interior illustrations. The game's creators also said that they used AI art because it allowed them to create more of an atmospheric style and visual uniqueness to their game, which I suppose is sort of true. It's going to be the same as anyone else who uses that AI style. But also in 2002, a TTRPG Blades and Souls released a Kickstarter campaign to fund a new core book, or a new book that was using AI-generated adventures. The campaign was successful, and the book is expected to be released sometime in 2023. I don't think it's already been released, but the creators of the book said that they were using AI to potentially revolutionize TTRPG design, and that they were excited to see the technology develops as it comes to the future. Obviously, while we know there's been a backlash on Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards of the Coast for a multitude of things, not the least of which is this AI artwork they're using in Big B's Presents. But Kickstarter is public opinion. The money comes from the public. So clearly not everyone is opposed to this if Blades and Souls was able to be released successfully funded on Kickstarter. I guess the question really is what have you dealing with a large number of players in your campaign of Vampire, St. P by Nights.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think your play? Do you use AI in your larger campaigns? Do your players have a response to that AI use? Have you seen a response from them in the context of AI?
I personally have not used or incorporated any AI into St. Pete by Night or into any of my gaming so far. Does that mean I never will in the future? Who's to say? But really, we have a number of talented artists in our community. We have a number of people who have a lot to contribute. We have 6 to 8 storytellers at this point that are bringing their own fresh perspectives and views and storytelling abilities to the table. And I would really always rather source to people. I would always rather, give people an opportunity, because you and I both know, as nerds for over 30 years, it's our dream job. Well, what nerd coming up didn't want to write their own system or tell their own story or, be an artist contributing to something like this? And the more and more we head into the future, the less and less likely that's going to be. So we are not only taking away jobs and possibly taking away flow of income from people who really, really need it, we're taking away opportunities. We're taking away dreams by using this, by transitioning to this model. I mean, who doesn't want to work for Dungeons and Dragons or Wizards of the Coast? Now you might not even be able to get the chance to. You might never get the chance to, especially if they become fully reliant on that. That's a whole bunch of dreams just flushed down the toilet. But to their benefit, I do want to take the opposite side of this. It'll be a lot easier to put content out faster. And that's why I think there are people who will support it, because they want more books. They want more material. They want more content from these big creators, and they'll get it. There won't be as many, production delays because they're waiting on art or they're waiting on writing. They can just put whatever they want into the machine and the machine will spit it out, and they could just put it right to page. But also that could mean that the quality of that stuff's going to go down too.
Right. And that's one thing. I was talking to one of my regular players for the Pendragon game I'm running. He didn't really have a strong opinion on AI. Like he knows that AI right now, it's bad at making hands. It doesn't do guns and knives and swords very well. It doesn't do, which is fine. It doesn't need to do weapons very well. The AI writing often sounds wooden and stale. And that's all true today, but that might not be true in 2 years or 6 months. At the rate that AI is advancing, I think that AI can sound very realistic and engaging, and I think it can create engaging and characters and encounters, and eliminate, as you were saying, a lot of the human side of it. So now editors can just go in, generate a quick AI thing, publish it, and I think that could very, very likely bring down the quality of gaming as a whole. And I think right now we're at a precipice of, we're having a hard time with game masters. Like, no one wants to be a game master. I know a lot of people who are using solo RPGs and things like ChatGPT to be artificial game masters. And we know that there are companies out there like Dungeons and Dragons who are trying to create digital humanless dungeon master experiences. I think that with all of that in context, all of these, where we're headed with all of this, I think we're going to run aground and run afoul of the idea that people can game master anymore. And I think gaming will become, I don't know. I think AI has the potential to really kind of, not only, I think we're already in the downtail of the RPG renaissance, that the revolution.
100%.
I think we're already in the downtail of that, but I think that AI will actually push that decline farther and faster, and we'll get more people who are going to play Baldur's Gate 3, Baldur's Gate 3, basically becoming the new virtual tabletop platform. Because again, as you said earlier, we can just rapidly pump out new content that may not be as high quality, doesn't have the flair of the individual storyteller, and doesn't have the oversight, I guess, of a human mind. I don't know. I think that's a real concern that I have for the future of gaming.
Well, to come back to what you said about like 2 years from now, it's wooden now, but what's it going to be like in 2 years? There's a saying that if you put 100 monkeys with 100 typewriters in a room for 100 years, they'll produce Shakespeare. Like, of course, over time, it's going to evolve and develop. But I think that one of the things that has always made TTRPG games and the TTRPG community so solid and give it so much depth is the fact that there's a human connection, that there's a sense of community, that people are interacting and collaborating and doing all of this together. It's a nice social outlet for people who might be deficient in certain social skills or might be neurodivergent. Like, a lot of people who have a certain social awkwardness are drawn to what TTRPGs present, what they create. Right. It's an opportunity to practice social skills with this kind of buffer of, well, it's all make believe, it's pretend, it's not necessarily real, human interactions that have real human consequences. And I think that if you're going to go the route of doing AI everything, we have that. It's video games. We've been doing that. Like, they have had for some time these AI generated platforms, even if they weren't as technologically advanced. So using AI in video gaming, fine. Again, you're taking away from artists and writers, but that's it's technologically based anyway. But when it comes to like a tabletop platform, people still love in-person games. People still love getting together with their friends, with their books and their pencils and their sheets and their dice, and sitting down. And I don't think AI can ever take away from that. But also, in a post-pandemic world, people are relying more on online gaming than they ever have before. And so it's kind of going to be the nature of the beast, but I do think it's going to be a problem. I do think it is going to decrease the quality, and therefore it's going to decrease the attraction that TTRPGs provide. I'm sure at first people are going to love that they can log on at any time and play with a robot, essentially, that allows them to go on adventures. But eventually they're going to see, like, this isn't what I want out of it. And either they're going to turn back to in-person gaming, or they're just going to be put off of it entirely, which I think is the real big problem that we could face with this. Is if they are put off it entirely, the whole industry goes down.
Right. And that's kind of my biggest concern. I think you're right that you can't replace the experience of sitting at a table and role playing. And I think even playing online, you don't get that real experience sitting at a table and rolling dice with your friends and whatnot. I think that, or even if it's not your home table, but like at a store table or a convention table, I think there's nothing that compares to that experience. It's like sitting around the campfire and telling stories. You can do that through Zoom, kind of, but it never is going to be, it's never going to have the same feel, the same atmosphere. But I think you're right. And the thing that concerns me is that is the more we go into this AI world, we are going to, we're going to dumb down players' ability to be able to do the things like the math. We already have things like D&D Beyond that do all the math and creation and stuff for you. So you don't understand the rules as well because the game is doing it for you. But you also don't necessarily get the same experience as a player, the satisfaction of being getting the story that really appeals most to you, because it's an AI. It doesn't understand you. It can't read your body language. It can't understand the subtleties of your vocal responses. Maybe it can eventually. I don't know. But right now, none of that's going to be there. I think that the big fear I have is, again, people are going to be turned off to the idea of gaming as a whole, which will hurt the industry. And it will also give people as I said before, the opportunity to never try game mastering, because now they don't have to. They can use these AI systems to game master. And I think that plays into a problem that we're already having in this hobby, that no one wants to run games anymore.
Well, I think that's what they're hedging their bets on, though. I think that's what the big companies are hedging their bets on, is like they're focusing more on the generation of Zoomers, the people who are raised or coming up during this time of, well, this is the norm. This is what they have always known to be the case since they were young, since 2020, since whatever. They've been used to this. So it's not going to be as much of a shock to them. And they'll just age out the generations that knew anything else. They'll just wait out the generations that did get raised on pencil and paper, that did get raised on storytelling and in-person game mastering and everything like that. They're just going to wait us out and then have this new generation that's just like, yep, we've accepted this. This is great. This is all we've ever known.
Right.
And then it won't even matter.
Yeah. And I think that they've got their brands, especially the larger company has their brands, and they're going to just milk those as much as they can. I don't think tabletop RPGs are really their focus anymore.
No.
I do believe that virtual tabletops, like I think Baldur's Gate 3 is a prime example of what virtual tabletops will end up being. MMOs, WoW, when WoW came out, D&D 4th edition was created to try to capture that WoW audience, not understanding the difference in audiences. And I think that that's something that we're seeing in the AI problem now too, is games like Baldur's Gate, or really forgetting Baldur's Gate altogether, but D&D Beyond and the platform that D&D is creating for the next Dungeons and Dragons version that comes out, D&D 6th or whatever we're going to call it. That platform, I think, is going to reduce people's understanding and acceptance of what tabletops are now, and make it harder to get out of that atmosphere, out of that. They're going to get more locked into that that walled garden is the word I'm looking for.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that AI is going to play a big part in that. I think having AI assist with automation of certain rules, enforcements, and calculations and things like that. I use Fantasy Grounds, so there's I wouldn't necessarily call it AI, but there's scripting in that program that does that, and I think that AI can be used in that capacity to make gaming more accessible to players. But there's a very, very real danger of it going too far. What are your thoughts on AI at the table? Let's say we're sitting around a table and playing Vampire or whatever, Dungeons and Dragons, and we've got an opportunity to use phone apps or iPad apps or computer apps or whatever to help make the game easier and more accessible for people who are deaf or blind, or in other words, other disabilities or learning disabilities, neurodivergencies, just bad at math. Like, what are your thoughts on that type of AI usage?
Well, I think it parallels the invention of cell phones and the internet, to be completely honest. Like, do you remember a time when you wanted to know something and you just had to live with not knowing, or that you had to wait and really go find the answers yourself? And maybe it would take days, weeks, months, years to even
Right.
get the answer to this question that you wanted. There was this like sense of wonder and almost this like elation when you did find out. Whereas now it's all instantaneous, it's all at your fingertips. Like, you want to know something, you just type it into your phone wherever you are in the world, and you can get an answer within seconds. And we just kind of come complacent with it. Like, all
Yeah.
of that
Although
wonder, all of that mystery just goes away.
it'd be nice if more people actually did that.
Well, it would be, yeah, of course. And well, it'd be nice if people believed in science and facts, but
Right.
that's not what we're talking about today. But that's what's going to happen with gaming too. Realistically, is like there is something magical at a table of breaking a story, or like characters uncovering a plot line, or
Yes.
even as a storyteller, having to change course from what you had originally planned, but finding something better in doing that,
Yes.
based off of the players inspiring you. I feel like this is going to, if we do it this way, if AI does get incorporated more at the tables, and it does take some of that agency away, we're going to grow numb to it. We're just going to we're going to be like the people in Wall-E, just fed content and fed answers to everything, to the point that we aren't even trying anymore. And it's just going to be like, yeah, okay, we're just going to accept less just because it's easier, just because it's there. And I think
because we're trained to a point where we don't know that there's something else to expect.
100%. And I think that we as people are going to get even dumber. We as gamers are going to get even dumber and less creative, because it's just being fed to us. It's just being shoved down our throats of like, this is what it is. This is what we do. And I think it's a disastrous direction to head in. But I think I want to go back to what we were saying about like Baldur's Gate and everything like that. One of the most popular games of all time, Skyrim, one-person game where you interacted with a completely simulated environment that you could just spend forever in. Like there was, unless you played through the whole story, you could stay in Skyrim forever. And that game just got replaced by Baldur's Gate 3.
Right.
And then at the same time, Diablo 4, another huge game that's out right now. All of these games are becoming more accessible. They just announced Baldur's Gate 3 is Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be cross-platform compatible, just like Diablo. So you're going to be able to play on your PlayStation and your PC and your Xbox and whatever, to the point that like everybody can quote unquote play together. And so what do you even need D&D for if they keep creating content for something like Baldur's Gate 3, and you can have the party dynamic, so to speak, even though there's not really a lot of role playing you're doing amidst your party. You're still role playing with the rest of the atmosphere.
Right.
That, like you said, that could be the future.
I think that's the future. I think we're seeing the future of the rebirth of, I think tabletop RPGs had their resurgence, and now I think MMOs are having their resurgence in a different light. And I think that's the same group of people who wanted to experience role-playing games, but didn't necessarily feel comfortable doing the role-playing like that. I think they go to MMOs. I think we're going to see a resurgence of games kind of like the era when WoW took over. But it's different. It's a different kind of thing. I think you're getting a different experience. I think it's appealing to different players. And maybe they'll wean off some of the players that came into role-playing through Critical Role or Dimension 20 or those type of campaigns, the online boom and the COVID boom of role-playing games. But I think that AI in that context and AI in the context of TTRPGs are actually quite different. I think there's definitely a crossover appeal. I really want to play Diablo 3. I haven't had a chance to, or not Diablo 3, Baldur's Gate 3. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, but it appeals to me greatly, but it's a different appeal than sitting down at a table and playing Dungeons and Dragons.
100%.
We kind of got away from the point of how do you think AI contributes to the accessibility and inclusivity of TTRPGs with players for players with disabilities or things like that? Like, do you think that can be an asset?
Yeah, I do. I think there's lots of benefits to it. I mean, they're tools, right? They're tools to help people. And like we said, TTRPGs call to neurodivergent people. They call to people with social deficiencies. And a big part of TTRPGs is role playing and, exercising social skills. So if you, for example, were not a very charismatic person, but wanted to play a charismatic character, something like a chat GPT or something that could write very charismatic dialogue for you, you could put what your general idea is, it could refine it and give you something to role play with that is more profound, perhaps, or more charismatic, more what you're trying to express. It could give your character a voice, even if you yourself don't have the base skills to make that happen. Yeah, it's definitely beneficial. I mean, it could be like a Stephen Hawking thing too, where like you might not have a voice, but if you have a program that you could type something into and it has like a voice option that allows you to express yourself that way, that could be beneficial. So yeah, it could work for people with certain disabilities that could help them be as engaged or as involved. But it's like a double-edged sword. Like it's going to give some benefits to some, but it's going to take some benefits away from others. And while I love inclusivity, I still think that like, don't bite the hand that fed you. Like D&D, Wizards of the Coast, all these companies, we've been funding you. You exist because of the people who have come before. And I'm not trying to say like, keep it the way it was. Obviously, all things evolve and you need to keep changing and growing. But they're moving towards cutting a whole bunch of people out, a bunch of people who's, grew up with their game and finally got jobs working for Wizards of the Coast after, 20, 30 years of playing their games. They might lose their job tomorrow if they find a way to, replace writers, a way to replace artists. And that's kind of a betrayal to the community they've created, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of ethical concerns, not just jobs and things like that, but there's also data privacy and consent and all that kind of stuff 100%. That we talked a little bit about before. So there's a lot of concerns that you're right. It is a double-edged sword. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to benefit from this. And there's a lot of people who could definitely suffer from this. And do you think it's the company's responsibility or our responsibility as players and game masters and the audience to police that? Like, obviously I'd like to see the companies do their own policing, and some of them are. I know Pathfinder, Paizo. I was going to say Cobalt, but Paizo has basically said they're not going to use AI artwork. I'm pretty sure they said that. I'm pretty sure Cobalt said that. I think a few companies look like they're hedging their bets on how it's going to go to see how the fans react. But do you think it's the fans' responsibility to hold these companies to task, or do you think it's the company's responsibility to take the higher road and really take these ethical considerations into account when they're creating their content?
Well, I think it's always been our responsibility as consumers. We talk with our money. So all the people who want to talk about the issues with Amazon or other big companies, while those issues are very valid, and yes, it would be nice to see more government oversight or more, regulations put so that people aren't working themselves to death. We talk with our money. We can complain.
Yeah, no matter how much we complain about it, nobody really stops using Amazon.
No. And as the more we fund it, the more we are giving our consent and approval to their practices, the more we are fueling the machine, as it were. So yeah, in our own way, it is our job to police it. If we don't like what Wizards of the Coast is doing, stop giving them your money. Stop paying for that D&D Beyond subscription. Stop going to, Wizards of the Coast sponsored streams. Like,
on my soapbox, on my soapbox just a little bit. I heard, as a store owner, a lot of people complaining about Wizards of the Coast's tactics of late, sending the Pinkertons to someone's house, using AI artwork, creating subpar products, all the other things that Wizards has done in the OGL, the last several years. Yet none of the people that I talked to ever canceled their D&D Beyond subscription. They didn't buy the new books. They didn't cancel subscriptions. So like, where are you really at on this? If you're going to take a stand and you're going to withhold your money, you really got to think about actually doing that and taking it away. And if you're not, understand that compliance is consent in this case. It really is, whether you like that Big B, the new Big B book has AI art in it. If you are supporting D&D Beyond, you are supporting the company that made that. And if you don't cancel your subscription, you are consenting to more of this kind of thing in the future.
And it even goes a step beyond that, honestly. Like, rather, not only do you have to stop giving them your money, you have to stop promoting their product through
Mhm.
your activities. You have to stop playing the game. As horrible as that sounds, even though you've bought the books, every time you play the game with people who have never played the game before, you are advertising for Wizards of the Coast.
Right.
You are saying, hey, we're all getting together to play some D&D, even if it's not with the newest books or the newest minis or the newest whatever. That's not going to stop those people from saying, I had a great time and going and buying those books. Like, you are advertising it across the board, going to the Dungeons and Dragons movie, playing Baldur's Gate. Like, yeah, you might stop using the TTRPG stuff, but you are funding Wizards of the Coast in one way or another if you are participating in any of those activities. And that's hard to do. We don't want to be doing this. We don't want to be having these problems. At heart, we still want to be entertained and we still want to have the things we want. But that's the issue, is if you really want to put a full stop to what they're doing, you need to stop signing off on their practices by endorsing their products, by giving them money, by being free advertising for them.
Right. And again, it's not necessarily not everyone is necessarily opposed to the idea of using AI in these situations. As I said, I am very much opposed to certain applications of AI, but in other applications, I don't necessarily think it's I don't think it's all that bad. Like, let's talk about some examples. And we've been beating up on D&D, and that's not necessarily fair because, as I said before, they're not the only company that has used AI.
No.
And we will do an episode where we talk about Wizards and Dungeons and Dragons in the future. That'll be an upcoming episode. But let's talk real quick about things that we can do at the table that, barring, regardless of system, regardless of game, regardless of anything like that, what we can do as players and as game masters to use AI in an ethical and responsible way. Like, what can we do to utilize AI without abusing AI? Like I said, I use it for prompts. I don't ever use it for straight up writing anything. I do use it for sometimes if I don't have an idea for a Dungeons and Dragons story or any story, really. Again, it's regardless of system. I've used it for Pendragon. I've typed in something like write me a story or give me 10 prompts in the style of Pendragon, the role-playing game, for an adventure. And it will. And it does an okay job. It's not great, but you can go through and pick them out and it gets your brain working. I've used it to generate stats for NPCs. I don't think it does a very good job of that either, but okay. What are some other things you can think of? What's that?
Yet it's not good at creating NPCs, but give it time. Like you said, 2 years, who knows?
And one thing about ChatGPT is it doesn't use any data that is more than in the last 2 years. It's using old data, so it doesn't have the most current stuff.
Right. But it will eventually. I think all things in moderation. I think that if you want to create a visual and maybe your words aren't doing you justice, like you're trying to describe a monster or you're trying to describe a location, something that can automatically generate an image for you so you don't have to spend, hours searching for something or worried about using someone else's artwork without their permission. There's a lot of kind of like hills you've got to cross to kind of use that kind of stuff. Whereas if you could just create something on the spot, just to be like, okay, you're in a dungeon that looks like this, or, you're facing a monster that looks like this, or, I mean, what storyteller or dungeon master hasn't had the issue of like, I got to come up with another fucking name. Like, I got to think of another NPC name. Having something that could generate that for you could be great. I think that the challenge for people who start incorporating that kind of technology into their games and into their tables, you've got to be careful of moderation. All things in moderation. You still have to work out your brain muscles and you still have to try to come up with it on your own, because the more and more you incorporate it, it's going to numb you. It's going to dull you. It's going to, dull your senses and your creativity to the point that it just becomes a full-on reliance for this thing, that you're not coming up with names on your own or prompts on your own or stories or imagery on your own. And that is going to, in the long term, hurt your skills. It's like an atrophied muscle. If you don't use it enough, it's going to stop working and
Right.
the technology is going to take its place. So yeah, in a pinch, it's a great thing to have. I have been that tired storyteller or dungeon master who still wants to play, but does not have the mental energy to create something for the players, that doesn't have the mental energy to come up with names or monsters or encounters or whatever. And I've found myself relying on pre-written stuff before as an inspiration to build something off of that. Like I'll start using a pre-written adventure, and then I'll be like, you know what, let's divert from this. I've got an even better idea than where this is going. And that's fine.
Yeah, that's one thing I think that AI can be very good for, is it
100%.
can get you rolling. And once you're rolling, a good quality GM, or even GMs who are really engaged in what they're doing, and players will be able to take that idea that started with the ChatGPT prompt and roll out this much better, bigger story than they would have otherwise gotten. I think that's absolutely right. Now, I don't really personally think anybody has I don't have a problem with anybody using AI at their table, their private table. However, there are a lot of people now who are doing stream games. I just finished up my streamed campaign for Star Trek Adventures. You are getting ready to come back to St. P by Night. What are your thoughts on people providing content like that, which are theoretically professional content that where you could make money doing this? What do you feel about people using AI artwork or fully generated stories on AI in that capacity? Personally, I think you shouldn't do that, but that's my personal.
No, I agree. I mean, again, you're putting your name on someone else's work, even if it is millions of other people's work, even if, it is sourcing just little bits from across the internet. It's not yours anymore.
Right. And you can't,
it's not,
there are rules right now. You can't copyright AI anything. You can't copyright AI written work. You can't copyright AI artwork, because it is derived so heavily from everything else. There's no uniqueness to it. It's all generative art. So I keep going. I think you're right.
I mean, if you're gonna outsource, give credit to people you outsource. If you want to brainstorm with people for campaign ideas, make those people a part of the process and give them credit where credit is due. If you need artwork, there are literally millions of people who make amazing art.
Right.
So put your money towards it. Put your money where your mouth is. You're going to be making money off of it. Maybe not a lot. Trust me, not a lot. But you're going to be making money off of it. So why not spread the wealth? Why not, share with people? Find people who are willing to donate just for publicity's sake. There are artists who, are on the rise, who might give you free artwork as long as you give them credit for the artwork that you're using.
Right. But on that note, don't expect artists to give you art for free.
No.
It's their work. They deserve to be paid for it.
Absolutely.
And exposure is not payment.
No, it's not. And it's one thing to say hey, we'll start with this, but that's also on the artist to say, I'm not going to keep giving you stuff for free. Maybe something to start, or maybe make an arrangement, but also get everything in writing.
Well, 100%. And just be reasonable when you expect something.
Yeah,
I know one of the big things that people really look to AI for is it helps them create art where they can't afford to pay for an artist to create for them. And I get that. I don't have a lot of money to throw at tabletop RPGs. That's not true. I spend a ton of money on RPGs, but I don't have a lot of money to spend on extra artwork. For one, I play theater of the mind, so I don't use a lot of artwork to begin with. I don't use miniatures. I don't use that kind of stuff. So I don't have a lot of extra disposable income for that. So I understand that people want to use this artwork and do these things, but you are taking money away from artists by doing that. And I think that if your excuse for using AI is I can't afford it or I don't want to pay anyone, that's a poor excuse. I think the justification for using AI art is I needed it quickly. I couldn't find an artist I needed to be able to do it in the time frame I needed. Or I'm not using it in commercial context. I'm not going to be making money off of this in any way. I think if you're going to have any chance of making money, you need to give credit where credit's due, and credit really means money.
Well, and the truth is, AI is solving a problem we don't have. It's solving a problem we don't have because we have solutions to that problem. people are just unwilling to do what it takes. They're
Yes.
unwilling to source the money. They're unwilling to budget themselves. They're unwilling to go without and have to rely upon their creativity or, find another avenue.
Right.
Instead, it's just like, hey, here's a quick fix. And while that seems great on the forefront, I think the long-term ramifications and problems that are going to come from that are way more detrimental than the problem ever was.
And I think people are going to feel attacked by that phrase, by the idea that they're not willing to do the work or it's solving a problem that doesn't really exist. The thing is we went generations of gamers, not little generations, but generations of gaming without this AI thing. And
Absolutely.
We either had to do without it, or we had to pay people to do it. So you're right. It is solving a problem that didn't really truly exist. And by doing so, I think it's creating a sense of entitlement to newer players or even older players, people like me who don't have a lot of money to spend on this artwork, but feel like this artwork would enhance our product, our quality, our not just, I don't mean product in the sense I'm selling something, but product in like when I'm telling a story, it's my product. I'm telling a story, even if it's just around a campfire. And if I can enhance that in some way cheaply or free, then I should have the right to do that. But I don't think you necessarily do just outright have the right, I guess, to do that.
Well, and this is going to be fairly controversial, and I'll probably get some hate for it, but the world doesn't need another shitty D&D stream. The world doesn't need another, mass-produced. I mean, there's so much noise out there as is. It's just thinning the herd more and more. It's just watering down the community more and more.
Which is not to say if you're having fun doing a stream,
no,
you shouldn't do it.
Have fun, but also know your limits. Know what you're capable of and what is respectful, and set a standard for yourself of, if I can't afford it, I'm not going to cheaply outsource it. I'm not going to, take spoons or take food out of people's mouths just to be able to do this. Like, have some respect for a community that you're a part of, and don't deprive it just because you can. Think about the long-term effect your actions and your stream is having, and you'll remain a part of the respectful streaming community, right, instead of, another.
So you're basically hinting at the idea that if there are two streams that have 10 viewers, neither one is making any money at that point. They're just doing it for fun. And that's fine. I think the most I ever gotten in my shows. Yeah, I think the most I ever gotten in any of my shows was like 35. Would you be more willing to watch one that is using AI artwork and has a higher production value, but the storytelling style is the same, but one has a higher production value than the other one that is being more honest and respectful and cognizant of the community?
I personally wouldn't prefer that, but I can see why people would. I think a lot of people are willing to pull the wool over their own eyes for the sake of entertainment, for the sake of content, for the sake of personal enjoyment. And that goes back to what we were saying about Amazon. Like, you want your thing in 2 days, even if it's not ethical, because it's there and because you use it.
So if you grow your stream that way, yes, it's capitalism. That's there is that element to it. You're doing what you have to do to make money, but at the same time, are you doing it ethically? And are you being evil?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of to an individual's sake, but I do see, I could see higher production value. I mean, that's what they're always pushing with all social media, with all media. There's kind of an expectation that, like, you have to have a certain amount of TikTok quality to be a influencer on TikTok. And the same goes for streams. The pressure is on to have a high production value stream, and that's because of things like Critical Role and Dimension 20, that if you aren't performing at that level, you're something that's not worth being viewed. But that also comes back to, what are you trying to do? You're never going to be Dimension 20. You're never going to be Critical Role. You're never going to be Matt Mercer as a storyteller. Like, you are never going to be these things. So, like, the pressure's off. You can take the pressure off yourself. You're never going to be that. Stop trying to.
I mean, I may not be the next Matt Mercer, but I could be the next me, you know.
You can be the first you.
It could be the first me, right? But so one thing, this is a slightly, it's not off topic, but it's a slightly broader macro look at things. We live in a world now where everything and everyone is a brand. Like if you are in public, even if you're just on social media, you are a brand. Everything you do is branding. And this is something the younger generation, like our generation, didn't have to deal with nearly as much as the kids growing up in school. Now your kids, and like that generation, and even the Gen Zers and stuff like that, everything is brand. Everything is brand.
Everything.
Personally, I don't want my brand, which right now is Studio Tembo and a few other things that I do. I don't want that associated with it using AI artwork. I don't want that associated with, you know, I don't want that Bill Cosby stink on me. You know, the Bill Cosby was doing. We know what Bill was doing. I'm not going to get into that.
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to get that kind of hate on me. And it's not that I have a fear of the backlash. I'm not afraid of being canceled. I don't have anything to lose in this context. But to me, I feel better when someone can see my product and know that I am giving them the authentic me, or as authentic as I can be being a brand, right? Now, when I created the Chat RPG logo, I didn't use AI art, but I did take someone else's artwork. I used Le Chat Noir, which is a very famous French cat painting in France.
Yeah.
It is common. It is open. It is a past its copyright. So I used it because I thought it was clever. Let's Chat Noir, Le Chat Noir, or Let's Chat RPG. I thought it was clever.
I think it
probably
great.
Isn't, but that kind of thing, I think if you're using other people's artwork in a creative and new way and presenting it in a new light, I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's the whole point of copyrights expiring, right?
Exactly.
And this does
public domain,
copyright law, public domain. That's the word I was looking for before.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we get from things falling to public domain and being able to derive something new from old artwork. The Sherlock Holmes TV show starring Benedict Cumberbatch. That show exists because Sherlock is public domain. Yep. And it's an amazing show that set Pumpkin Bannercoot's career on fire. And I think like you can do a lot with that, but I think that that's not the argument that is being made when it comes to using AI artwork. I'm not sure that argument shouldn't be made. I'm not a lawyer. But I think right now when I'm doing my own art, when I'm doing my creative stuff, I don't feel it's the same. I don't feel that I'm using something that has been in public domain and public life for so long and I'm putting a new spin on it. I think using AI artwork is taking something that is current in the current world and manipulating it, bastardizing it in a way. And I shouldn't be profiting on that, is in my opinion.
Well, this goes back to what I said about there are no, or at least very few original ideas left. Yes. Everything is inspired by something. Parody has existed for hundreds of years. The concept of parody, taking something that someone else has created and putting your own twist or spin on it.
I imagine the oldest joke in history is a parody. So
absolutely. And bringing up Sherlock is a perfect example. Sherlock, the concept of Sherlock itself is not an original idea. Even Arthur Conan Doyle, like, not original. The concept of like an investigator investigating things, not an original idea. However, I think that it is people's interpretation, putting their own creative spin on it, using authors and writers and actors. You're going to get a lot more unique input on a previously adopted idea. And so it's not going to be the same thing. It's not like they're doing Hound of the Baskervilles word for word in the way it was intended from the novel. Like they're going to put their own creative spin on it, but that takes people. That takes the involvement of people and creative minds and different perspectives.
Every performance of Shakespeare is its own piece of art.
Right, 100%. Or we'd have stopped doing it a long time ago. If there was only one way to do it, Hamilton wouldn't be touring the country and selling out auditoriums everywhere because Lin-Manuel's not in it. Like these things take a life of their own beyond just the original idea. And that's why I don't mind people paying homage to something or people adapting something and
Right.
taking inspiration from something. But I think that, again, using a machine to do it isn't necessarily the right way, especially when there is an opportunity to use people, to
Right.
use, to pay people who that's their thing. That's what they, have trained to do, or they have learned to do, or spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in school to do. Let's use people before we rely on machines. Yes, there's a lot of good machines can do. This place would be a wasteland if it weren't for machines, and we'd all be living to the age of 40 and then dying if it wasn't for machines. But there's a difference between necessity and luxury, and I feel like this is a luxury.
That's a good point. Yeah, luxury. It is a luxury, and you mentioned uniqueness also. I think that's where it comes down to the luxury. The luxury is, there's two luxuries really. We have the luxury of having everything be unique, and we have the luxury of being able to not have that. And I think if you're going to use one or the other, I think you should choose to have as original as possible. There's a saying in the firefighting industry that's try before you pry, which means try just opening a door before you use the big tool and break somebody's stuff. And I think that is apt to this moment, this discussion where it's a problem that doesn't need to be solved because you could just open the door. On the other hand, you have this machine that can open that door forcefully and take something from someone else. And that's I think my thought on it anyways.
If they really wanted to do AI in a ethical way, and I'm not sure that's even possible or interested or of interest to them, but it's one thing to say like, hey, we've got this thing that creates stuff. You can willingly submit your art, your writing, your whatever to this thing, and it'll do its thing with what you've created because you have volunteered it. But the truth of the matter is it is stealing. This machine is stealing from people, and it's doing so in a way that it can kind of get away with it, but it's stealing. Like a lot of the art out there that you're seeing online, a lot of the photos, a lot of the stock footage, all that stuff is copywritten, is put out there for artists to try and build their brand or to build their industry. They're not giving it away. They're putting it out there as an advertisement.
These apps are scraping from DeviantArt and other places like that and taking art without consent.
Yeah, 100%. And they can get away with it because they're doing their Dr. Frankenstein thing with it and just taking bits and pieces and inspiration from it. But it is stealing. At the end of the day, it is stealing, even if it is the kind of like wormy take a couple cents off or couple percentages of a cent off of a transaction. It's still stealing. And so I think that if it were to back up to a place of like, yes, we have this service and everything that comes from this service is all donated, is all public domain as a way of putting it, that I would have less of an issue with, but that's not what's happening. Like we need to see beyond the veil of what's happening. I think
it brings up an interesting concept. If an artist were to use an AI generative device, the code for AI generation, add only their artwork into it, and then have people go and pay that artist even $1 or whatever it is you're paying a regular artist. Like if Louis Royo had his own AI thing, like I would pay money to Louis Royo's AI bot to make a Louis Royo type artwork. I would absolutely pay to do that, but I think you're right. I think that's an interesting concept, but
and I think that it's completely possible.
Yeah, I think it would be I think it's a really novel idea of how it could be done, how AI could be done in an ethical fashion. I also think that people who know their art has been taken by an AI should have the right to withdraw that or get a court injunction or something to have that removed. But that's a whole other level of the conversation, getting into legal stuff.
If they can afford it. That's the other thing. Lawyers and everything. Like you can't beat the machine if the machine has more money than you.
Right. And of course, people are paying the machine to make this artwork that is, it's all comes back to some of the evils that come from certain types of capitalism
and solving a problem we didn't have. Let's
go ahead and I've got 3 pros and 3 cons of using AI in tabletop RPGs, and we'll go over that and then we'll do our final thoughts and we'll move on. We'll do our gratitudes and then we'll go. So the first pro I think is AI art and writing can be used to create new and unique experiences for players if used appropriately by the game master. I think that's something we both agree on.
Yes.
AI can help creators save time and money on art and writing tasks, whether that's right or wrong. It can be done.
Can be done.
AI can be used to create art and writing that would be difficult or impossible to produce by human artists or writers. I am not sure that is a true thing, a true statement, but it is one of the pros that came up when I was asking around. Any thoughts on that
again, it's a thing that if you're willing to do the work to get it, you can get it. If you're willing to source up the money, if you're willing to do the research, because a lot of the things that you want, you can find. You can find it if you do enough digging. Like, I mean, digging for certain images or certain words or certain whatever, you can do it, but it takes time and it takes effort and it takes money and it takes research and it takes, it takes a lot. It's going to cost you something, even if it's not.
I don't believe that the machines I don't believe that the AI algorithms or any that can do something, can create a piece of art or writing that is something that is impossible for humans to do. I mean, obviously it might be something that we didn't create. I think they can create original things. I don't think they're thinking about it. They're using our prompts and whatnot, but they're definitely not. It can be new, but it can't be, I think, impossible for a human mind to come up with. So
it's not manifesting something that doesn't exist.
Couldn't exist.
It's taking pieces of things that do exist and mashing them together.
Yeah. 3 cons. AI art and writing may not be as high quality as humans. Right now, that is certainly true, but I don't think that's going to be necessarily true in the long run.
Not forever, no.
AI art and writing may be perceived as unethical, disrespectful to human creators. I think we discussed a lot about that, and I think that's absolutely
stealing.
I think it's absolutely true. And the perception, I don't think it's objectively unethical or disrespectful, but it certainly has the potential to be that. And the use of AI art and writing may lead to job losses of human artists and writers, which we talked about. I think that's all things we can agree on, right?
100%.
All right. Ultimately, the decision for whether or not to use AI art or writing in TTRPG books or your individual table, your stream, is your decision. It's the individual creator, or in this case, not necessarily creator, but the individual content producer to decide. There are pros and cons to using AI. You may get backlash. I'm sure this episode's going to get some backlash. I'm hoping this episode generates some conversation. But you must weigh these factors when you're making that decision.
People are going to do what they're going to do, and we can't stop them. I mean, people created this without asking the world if it needed it. People are going to do what they want, and here's to them. That's what freedom is.
I'm for pushing the boundaries of technology and advancement too. Like,
absolutely.
I think that's something that we should be doing. Like, discovery for the sake of discovery, and this is that. This is AI has been created for the sake of pushing the limits of human creativity and create human capability. So I think that's good, but no device ever created on its own is evil by nature. It's how we use it and what we do with it. Except cancer. Fuck cancer.
Well, but let's use AI to cure cancer and solve homelessness before we worry about creating another D&D piece of art or another stream. Sure. Like, priorities, people.
Right. But I mean, money is priority. So,
right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's definitely, it's up to you to decide what you want to do. And again, there's a disclaimer at the end of the show, and I really want to point that out. It's in the show notes, in the show credits. And I really want to point out, this is everything that we're saying here is just an opinion, and that opinion may change with new evidence, new context, everything changes, right? The views and opinions expressed by the people on the show, including myself, may not necessarily be my own views and opinions or the views and opinions of those who were saying them. We are talking, we're arguing, we're discussing. If you have something you want to bring up and you have a point that you want to bring up to this topic, please take it in the context of we're here to discuss the topic, not necessarily be firmly rooted in the idea. Like, we're all open to having our minds changed because we're grown up people. So don't send hate mail so much as mail that can be constructive. That's what I'm saying.
Listen,
I look forward to people's content.
I'm not judging people who choose to benefit from this. I mean, if you see an opportunity, grab it. There's so few of them in this day and age that don't cost more than we can afford. Like we are stretched thin. We are stretched tight. And so resorting to that, I don't fault anyone for that. Anything that can give you a leg up or an advantage or even just a benefit, I understand going for it. But I think that just putting in a little bit further thought beyond your own situation, because realize as thin as you're stretched, so are the artists, so are the writers. I mean, Hollywood is on strike, all of it, the writers and the actors, like it is fully on strike right now. So, and it's not just the millionaires that are on strike. It is the day-to-day workers who are on the risk of going homeless if it weren't certain funds. Like everybody is stretched thin. And so just think a little bit more beyond how it's going to benefit you. Who is it going to detract from? But I don't fault anyone. I've been financially strapped and needed a map for a game or needed a piece of art for a game. And I'll say I've gone around boundaries to do so. Like I've taken other people's work and used it, but also I wasn't making money doing that. I was just doing it for a night's enjoyment with my friends. So it's just consider the ramifications of what you're doing, but I don't fault anyone for doing it. I totally understand the motivation for doing it. And I totally understand how this could be beneficial on a day-to-day, but it's beyond the day-to-day. We have to think of the future generations of this hobby.
The potential harm this could be doing
long-term,
as well as the benefit that it could be giving us.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and do gratitudes. I'm going to start today just because I have one, and if I don't say it now, I will forget about it. And I shouldn't, because my gratitude is an easy one for this episode. I'm very grateful to the actual writers, artists, and creators who are out there who are, I know how hard it is to write. I write, according to Grammarly, which is an AI art platform, AI writing platform, I wrote 5.5 million words last year. I didn't make money on none of them words, but I like writing, and I respect the people who can do it on a professional level and get that out there into the world. I think writers and artists deserve all of the credit, because they're not just a reflection of our society. They are something that helps not just hold the mirror, but actually create society as a whole. So I think that's something I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. I'm grateful to the artists and writers of the present, as well as the artists and the writers of the past. I mean, there are those who came before, the very founders of D&D, who probably aren't scraping a cent off of it, or you may not even be alive anymore.
Well, yeah, they're not
to
alive
benefit
anymore.
from how much this game has grown and expanded, and how much this hobby has grown and expanded to be where we're at now. Like we're standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak, and that tower just keeps getting taller with each generation. But also I'm grateful to the people who are stretching the limits of technology. I'm grateful that we are trying things and that we aren't becoming complacent. Like I'm glad that AI is a thing, because it could potentially solve a lot of problems. Maybe not
even
problems we have, even ones we don't know what we have. But like, we're heading somewhere amazing, or potentially dangerous, or potentially catastrophic. Who knows? But that's how we get here. We wouldn't have things like D&D and TTRPGs if someone didn't just try something, even if it was something we didn't need. So I'm grateful to innovators and inventors.
Yep. Awesome. All right. With that, I think we can go ahead and call it a night. I hope you enjoy this episode. And again, if you have hate mail or even love mail you want to send us, there should be a link in the link tree below. If there isn't a form there, I will create a form that will be specifically for this show and maybe this episode even. I don't know. But you can find this podcast anywhere that fine podcasts are given away absolutely free. I believe that I am now actually up on Apple. That was the last one I was waiting for. We're on Alexa. We're on Google. We're on TuneIn, iHeartRadio. If you can find us, if you look for us, you can find us. Also on YouTube, and feel free to share this episode and any other of my episodes or any other shows that are on Studio Tembo's production with anyone and everyone that you think might enjoy them or might hate them and have an opinion that they want to send me. So, and as I don't think I said it in this episode, but I said it in one of my intro episodes. We are always looking for your stories and your questions that we will answer. I will answer on camera. I will ask the guests, any guests, doesn't matter. and questions you have about game systems or the ethics of gaming or how to find players, really any question related to gaming, your stories, blunders, triumphs, all that stuff. I will find a better way to say this in a future episode that does not make me stumbling over my own tongue. But with that, on behalf of myself and Kent, anything else you want to say?
If you have any hate mail, send it to the show, not to me. Don't seek out my social media to give me hate mail. But you can find me at Misha Kent on all social media, and you can find St. Pete by Night at St. Pete by Night on all social media. But yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and I hope I can return for future episodes.
Yeah, and there you go. You don't have to go hunting down his social media to send him hate. You know exactly where they are.
I shot myself in the foot on that one.
All right. There's a link in the link tree below. There's a link tree in the stuff below. I cannot get that said properly in any episode.
You'll get it.
I can't do it. I've been saying that same phrase or trying to say the same phrase correctly for almost 2 years. I cannot do it. In the links below is a link tree that has more links in it to stuff that you can do. On behalf of myself,
you got a chat bot and be like, write me an outro.
Yeah, I should do that. Yeah, there you go. Really, I just need to sit down and actually write one. I was trying to do my reviews for an episode earlier today, and I'm like, I need an outline. I can't do this. I was stumbling over myself. It's terrible. Anyways, on behalf of myself, on behalf of Kent and everyone here at the Wandering Pod Studios, which is an old reference, thanks and so long, and thanks for all the fish.